Good evening, everyone. I'm Talia Evans, the Media Relations Specialist with the Kansas City Public Library. I'm so thrilled for you to hear from our two guests tonight who have done just as much for our community as they've told its story. Before I introduce them, I want to remind you, if you want to participate in the conversation tonight, feel free to drop a question in the chat anytime. Mará Rose Williams is an education reporter for the Kansas City Star. She's also on the editorial board, and she's worked for the Star since 1998. Before that, she was a reporter in Atlanta and New York. More recently, she played a pivotal role in the Star's 2020 project in The Truth in Black and White, and this year she received the Eleanor McClatchy Award. Dia Wall is another award-winning journalist who got her start as a team reporter for the Dallas Cowboys before moving to newsrooms in Sherman, Texas, then Tyler, Texas, and then she made her way here to Kansas City, where she's the evening anchor at KSHB-41 News. In her first book, The Unhappiest One, Finding Joy in My Journey to Purpose, she talks about those career moves and her goals. She refers to her book as a sort of memoir. I see it as a self-help, not self-help book. However you see it though, Dia's book takes a good look at the lessons she's learned, and anyone who reads it will relate and be inspired. I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation tonight. Mará, Dia, welcome. We are excited to have you.
Thank you for having us here. Yeah, it's great.
Yes, thank you. Super excited to be here.
So I guess we're ready to get started. Dia, I'm glad to see you too. It's great to have a chance to chat with you, especially about this wonderful book that I read and loved every minute of it, every word. It was wonderful. Let me just ask you, first of all, let's start out by, I just want to ask, what inspired you to write this book? I mean, I write all the time, and the most intimidating thing in the world is to write a book. What inspired this?
You know what? It is the story that I opened the book with. It was having my daughter feeling like I'm at the... I realized I should probably take some time, sit down, collect my thoughts, and really figure out what was going on with me internally. And over years, because you know how it is, Mará, you have two kids, right? You get busy and life gets in the way. And it was really the pandemic. I can't tell you the number of stories and the amount of inspiration that has come out of that, but I was home for 3 months. Mm-hmm. And I remember one night talking to my co-anchor, Kevin Holmes, and he was like struggling being at the house. Now, keep in mind, he was still able to go to work every day. So many of my friends were having a really difficult time being able to find that joy, that purpose in the middle of a really tough circumstance. And I felt like I had a little bit of a roadmap. You know, when they say you fully healed is when it's okay to talk about it. And I think that's where I was. I think I was able to look back over my life and say, you know what, I've learned some things. And I feel like I tell people the same stories and I give people the same advice. And so why don't I put it all in one spot? And I was able to do it.
One of the things you said, you know, you have the 2 kids and you're looking back on your life. Have you been journaling your life all along, or
looked totally different than how I feel now? And that goes back to your first point. That's how I knew I was ready. And I felt like this may be valuable for other people who find themselves in the same spot I've been in time and time again. And so, yes, I journal. Don't let that intimidate you. I encourage people, man, write a little bit. I write to my kids.
Oh, right. Yes.
Some of the stories in the book, we talk about my kids and experiences I've had with them. And I want to be able to get that snapshot in time. And I want them to know what their mama's voice sounds like. And so I think that was really important for me.
Oh yeah, you definitely did a wonderful job of writing. I mean, the one story that's very powerful and very emotional, it's like you jump right in with this one. And this is your relationship that starts the relationship you had with your dad. And as you described the morning, getting up, I see that little girl. I mean, I saw her. I know exactly what you looked like, Dia. I had you with little pigtails and just bopping around. And
absolutely.
I saw the energy. And I mean, you did a beautiful job of the description, and the color in there is just wonderful. You also talk a lot about your kids, right? And it's clear that that is the pinnacle of joy for you.
100%.
Right.
100%. I think I always tell people getting married, I thought was the best thing that ever happened to me. And then I became a mom. there's no greater feeling. I mean, from the moment I laid eyes on our daughter, I felt like I could fly. I mean, I have never felt love and overwhelming peace the way I did when that little girl was born. And it's wild because I think having a child, Mará, really took me on this path where it was like, how could my dad do the things he did? Right? Or it really gave me some existential questions that I had to answer, you know? And for me, it was therapy. Like, we got to be real. I think that there's a huge stigma around therapy and talking to folks and processing those feelings. There's no way I would be able to be as happy and healthy and whole as I am mentally, emotionally, spiritually, as I am right now, had I not done that and taken that step, because I knew something was off, you know? I love my kids. It's no secret. They're crazy.
Will test you, girl. They will test you. I'm telling you, kids will test you. Just when you think you got it all figured out,
change it up.
They will throw a wrench in it every time, you know, and you have to go back and say, wait a minute, I'm not ready for this one yet. So
I call it household humility.
Yes, absolutely. They're wonderful and amazing. They'll bring you tons and tons of joy. I know my boys did. They still do, and they're grown. So, but they still throw wrenches in it, you know, every time. You also talk a lot about your career, and I was really impressed with all the things that you have done. I mean, how long have you been a journalist?
So I started in the spring of 2008. That's when I graduated from college. And funny thing, 2008 now is marked by the pandemic, right? We all look back and we say, okay, the economy was really horrible. You know this, Mará, journalism jobs were drying up. People just weren't moving on. And so I could not get a news job to save my life. And it turns out, and I talk about this in the book, I remember I interned. And I've always been somebody who feels like work hard and the rest will follow. And some really great folks who I still call mentors and friends to this day recommended me for a job that wasn't even advertised. That's the only way I got that job. And so I ended up doing that. And I was there with the Cowboys for almost 3 years. Loved every minute of it. And
Great job.
Yeah. And then I finally got my shot, you know, to go do news, and it was beautiful. I was a weekend anchor in Sherman, Texas. My news director at the time is still a good friend, and he used to call me and the woman who ended up being one of my maids of honor at my wedding. We became roommates because starting in journalism, you're broke. And we knew tons of people who knew both of us, but we had never met. And we have become thick as thieves, but he used to always call us the Texas tornado because we would come in there with all the energy, bouncing up and down, Anthony. And from there, I went to Tyler, Texas, met one of my best friends in this industry to this day. I talk a lot about him and what he means to me. And then Kansas City. I mean, the journey to get here was wild, but I am a firm believer that there was some divine intervention there to point me here.
Are you looking to go someplace else, or you think Kansas City is going to be home for a while?
You know, it's crazy. I haven't looked for a job in a long time. Mm-hmm. And I say that when I came here, I thought, you know, I'll be here for a contract, maybe 2 or 3 years, and then we'll bounce. And I kid you not, what we found is just amazing community. I have so many honorary aunties and uncles and grandparents, people who have watched our daughter when I was a brand new mom, and my husband, who's a consultant's flight was delayed, and I'm trying to get from A to Z. I mean, when I tell you, we've just had an amazing, amazing village come behind us, beside us, and have really shown us how to make this place our home. And so now it's like, we have such a huge family here in Kansas City. Even our parents are like, y'all might need to stay put for a while. I was like, I think so.
Yeah. Nice. Well, since we're talking about work, one of the things I did notice about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I noticed as I was reading your book, is that you seem to be the kind of person who, you know, you make a list. Here's how my life is going to go. You're writing it all out. I could just see you writing it all out and taking steps. Did it go the way you planned it?
No.
Tell me about that.
Absolutely not. So my goal when I went to journalism school was, I said, you know what, I'm going to graduate. I'm going to work my way up. I'm going to be in a top 10 market by the time I'm 30. And then I'm going to be a network correspondent by the time I'm 35. You know, I think a big part of me being able to find my own sense of like peace and purpose was like, you got to let that go. I mean, if you would have told me you're going to meet your husband in Tyler, Texas, I would have laughed you out of town. Okay. There's no way. I mean, it's a small East Texas town. I never would have guessed. And our parents actually lived 20 minutes apart in our hometown. So, I mean, now I think I'm more relaxed. Not that I don't have goals, not that I'm not driven, not that I don't want to keep achieving at a high level, but I think I've recognized that you can't chart everything out. Kids teach you that too. Mará, you know that, just like
absolutely. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
And now I got the opportunity a couple of years ago, was in talks to get what was the dream job. And I just remember thinking, do I really want to live out of a suitcase now?
Right.
I want to see my kids grow up.
Right.
That's what I want to see. You know, I want to be able to be at dance class on a Monday night before I get to sit and talk to you. And so, man, my goals have changed significantly.
Right.
And so
that priority. Yes.
And I think part of my advice for people would be open yourself up to the possibility that you haven't even considered or processed what's out there for you.
Do you believe in destiny, Dia? Do you believe that there are things that you are destined to do that you don't even know you're destined to do them?
All right, Mará, we're gonna have to go to church a little bit. I'm a woman of faith, okay?
Yes.
No, I am a Christian, and yes, 100%. I think there are things that are destined for you. In the book, the very last chapter, which may not seem like a big one, but for me it was, talks about what you do is not who you are. It took me a really long time to divorce those two things because I felt like my entire identity was wrapped up in my career. Right. And the minute I let that go, that's how I ended up in the perfect place for me in Kansas City. You know, I work with yes, I work with people I love every day. I have a management team and a company that's really supportive of the kind of journalism and work I want to do. And that's really beautiful. So, I see we got some questions coming in.
Oh, I don't even see questions. I can't see them.
I think they popped up in our chat here. Kyle Rose says, how do you define happiness? Oh, Mará, you answer that first.
How do I define happiness? Well, you know what? Somebody asked me that some years ago in terms of, basically asking me, are you happy? And my answer at the time was sometimes, but not all the time. That sometimes happiness can be fleeting. And I think differently now. I think that there is a base happiness, right? I mean, like this overwhelming joy kind of happiness, that might be fleeting, but there's a base happiness. And that I define happiness in content and feeling safe and secure with myself and my life. And most of all, girl, I define happiness with my boys. When I see them successful and doing what they need to do, I feel like, yes, mama, you did the right thing. You raised them right. And that brings me more joy than almost anything else. And that's a constant, right? So there is a base happiness. And then you have these moments when things are super duper happy and wonderful, but that is not sustainable. And you have to understand that that is not sustainable. I mean, that's how I feel about it. What about you, Dia?
I agree with so much of what you said, Mará. For me, Kyle, happiness is feeling like easy like Sunday morning.
Oh, yes.
That's happiness for me. Mm-hmm. Happiness is when you're driving down the car and the weather's nice and you roll the windows down and you actually take that in. I think for me, it's being present, right? And feeling like everything is harmonious and gelling the way it should be. Not that you don't have challenges or conflict, not that everything's going to go perfectly, but I think for me, it's feeling like I'm in balance. It's feeling like I can give to my friends. I can go have coffee with Mará, right? I can sit down with my husband and talk about something other than our kids every once in a while. And then feel like I'm doing something of meaning and purpose in my career, which I love. Being able to connect with a good friend. Happiness for me is being at the right emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical place to appreciate and enjoy everything that's around you in your life.
Absolutely. I totally agree. That is exactly, I love that easy like Sunday morning. That is so true. Yes. Well, we've got a question here from Katie. Katie wants to know, she wants us to tell us, both of us to tell us about a time when you thought you'd not measured up and everyone around you thought differently.
Katie, that's why I wrote the book. I mean, real talk. And I don't say that to be, I mean, I'm telling you, that's 100% why I wrote this book, is because at the time I moved to Kansas City. I was a morning reporter, and the evening show is considered a big promotion. You know, anchoring is considered a big promotion. And I had just gotten promoted to the weekend evening anchor job, which for me was perfect because I love to be in the field and I also love to be in the studio. And, you know, we had some challenges, man. I had a miscarriage, me and my husband, with our first pregnancy. And we were right there at 3 months when we thought we were safe, you know? And I just remember we got pregnant again. And I'm so thankful because I know how many women, how many families are out there struggling who want to have children. All I can tell you is do not give up hope. Do not give up hope. Right. And I remember coming home with that baby. And I'm like, I just got a great promotion. My husband's cute. He loves me. We have a great relationship. You know, I just remember our family was there. We have such great support. I mean, the perfect nursery. And I was sobbing on the floor of my closet. And I couldn't figure out why that wasn't enough. Right. And everybody around you looks at you and says, oh my God, you have this glamorous career. And oh my God, y'all look like the cute little Hallmark card family. And you sometimes look at your external circumstances to define what your internal happiness looks like.
Right.
And those two things don't necessarily jive always. And so it was that. I would say it was right when I had our daughter, because the people close to us knew I was devastated, y'all, after that miscarriage. I was devastated. And the reason I want to talk about that is because before I had one, I had no idea how common it was. Right. I had no idea how common infertility was. And so the more we talk about these things, open up, take these Band-Aids off, then those wounds can actually heal and we can really start to uplift each other. That was a long answer.
even when we have a child, you know, we almost forget that, you know, how that everybody else has had one too, that other people, it's like, you know, my world is my bubble. And, yes. and you know, having a child, becoming a mother allows you into this club. And then you start to talk to other women about being a mom and you find out how common the experience is. And you begin to share, yes. It gives you a certain amount of strength when you do that. Talking about a time when I didn't feel like I measured up. Listen, I want to tell y'all, sometimes I feel that once a week. Woo. You know, sometimes I feel that once a week where I will do something or put all my heart and soul into a story and think, oh, it's just not good enough. It's just not good enough. It's just not good enough. And then I hear back from people. That's why it's so important for me to have relationships. And this job is all about relationships, right? It's really important to have relationships, not just with, you know, your friends and your family, but the people you meet on the street. There's a certain yes. level of relationship that is important. And I love it when people respond to anything that I write. Not that I need their validation, but then I see that I have actually been successful in achieving what I wanted to do in telling someone's story. I think people too sometimes forget. I wonder if you ever feel this, Dia, where you think people feel like we are an industry, like we're like you're the media and I'm the media. And they forget that I am actually a human being who is often moved by their stories, right? Yes. Have you ever had an experience where you've gone and done a story and it was so moving that on your way back to the station, you find yourself praying that you will be able to convey this story to your audience in the same way you felt about it when you received it? Have you ever?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And it's because I tell people, rarely do people like you and I show up on a regular Tuesday.
Right.
We show up at the highest of high and the lowest of low. Right. And the best journalists are ones who are empathetic, are people who do connect, are people who do try to be emotionally open so that you can give people some of that comfort. We have to be a little bit vulnerable for people to trust us with their stories, for people to trust us with like their deepest pain. And I agree wholeheartedly. I can't tell you how many people I've prayed for. I can't tell you how many times I have woken my husband up when I got home. There are days you yell, I cuss a little bit, let's keep it real. I scream, but there are also days where you just cry. Because there are those stories that just feel so hopeless or so hard. And you want to be as effective as possible in sharing that and spreading it. And so I agree, but I will tell you, I keep pushing and I keep plugging away, and we do it on behalf of the people who trust us to be the caretakers of their stories.
When you're going to a story, you're going to get there, and this is maybe a cold story. You haven't met this person, you haven't spent any time talking to them. What do you do, Dia, to get them to trust you within those first 3 minutes? Because that's the window, right? You meet the person, you need to get them to trust you enough to tell you their story, to open up. What is it that you do? Do you ever share some of who Dia Wall is, and how much of it do you share?
Oh, absolutely. I do the same thing. I do the same thing I did in the book. Mm-hmm. The easiest way for someone to feel seen is for you to show them the things that you have in common.
That's right.
And so, I've been at scenes before where families have lost children. I have been places where some really difficult things have taken place. And I think it's so important, man, to open yourself up a little bit. Not that you want to co-opt their experience, but you do want to tell them, look, I see you. Yeah. And I understand where you are. You don't show up with a camera, lights flashing in their face. I think I always go in first. I go in by myself a lot of times. And I make it a point to talk to them, see what their comfort level is. I'm never upset or offended when somebody's not ready. I think it's important to give people space to process and think and open up in their own time. And so that's kind of my tactic.
I remember a time, this was a really rough story that I had to cover in Atlanta, where this woman had reported her 2 children, twins, were missing. And so I show up at the scene, and they're looking for these children, and they're hunting for these children, looking for these children. Turns out the children had been left in the car, and it was like, I don't know, it was really hot, like in the 90s degrees. And what happened was, this mom had worked a double shift, and she didn't usually pick her children up. She usually had someone else pick them up, but she picked up the kids. She was really tired. She came in and she said, I'm just going to go upstairs, and then I'll go down and put my stuff down. Then I'll go down and get the kids. And she fell asleep, and she forgot these kids were in the car. Needless to say, it did not end well. And I was covering this, and I was out there while they were looking for this. And when they found these kids, this mom was just completely wrecked. And I will tell you, Dia, that was the one and only time where I was wrecked with her. I just, completely lost it. And so it's like, well, that's so unprofessional of you to cry on the scene. I was like, no, I was totally wrecked. So yes, I mean, you're human, and so you feel it. You see these stories and their pain and their sorrow, and you have to write about it. You can't help but feel that, and to take some of that in. And sometimes sharing is very important. You do have to, I think, as you become better at this job, you learn just how much to share.
Yes.
And you know that not to share too much, but to share enough to make a connection. And that's what's important. And there are some journalists who believe that you should never share any of your personal story. I don't subscribe to that. I'm often sharing a little bit about me, especially motherhood. Kids, I'll talk about kids. Love talking about my kids, and that helped a lot.
All day. Christina was asking, how did I decide which parts of my story to share? And how did I make the switch from telling other people's stories to telling your own? Okay, so I only believe in sharing things that I've already healed from. You definitely don't want to share or talk about painful things and experiences in your life if you have not fully healed, right? And the reason why, because that's an open wound, right? It'll delay you being able to reach a point of fulfillment and wholeness before you dive in. I chose them based on the things that I felt made the biggest impact on me and were the most profound. As a result, it was some pretty hard stuff in there, but these are all things that I have processed through, that I have worked through with my family, my therapist, all that. And so when it came to making the switch, I was asked to do a few events over the course of the last 18 months. And I felt like I kept getting the same questions. And they all surrounded happiness, purpose. Where do I go? What do I do? Fulfillment, right? I think COVID-19 has changed our world in ways that we have only begun to process. But I felt like people kept coming to me saying, what's that little light you have? Your eyes twinkle just a little bit differently than everybody else's, despite everything going on. And I felt like I was giving some version of this story in bits and pieces my whole life. And so it ended up being, that's when I decided, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and put this down. I'm going to go ahead and make this a larger story and share it. Now I was terrified. I'll be the first to tell you. I still have a little bit of nerves that people are actually reading this and it's out there in the world.
Oh, it's wonderful. It is really wonderful.
I so appreciate it.
I want you to talk to me a little bit about the give back, because you do talk about that. You talk about, finding your purpose, but you also talk about the importance of involvement in community involvement and what that does for you in this process and as you're going on this journey. Talk to us about when, have you always been involved with volunteering and giving back, or is that something that you developed as you began this healing process?
Always. I have always been someone who believes in service. That's huge. I think that I had such a great example of that my entire life in my mom, and I talk about her a lot in the book. And so for me, it was one of those things where it was a no-brainer. Every place I have ever worked, I've done Meals on Wheels because I love it. The only reason I stopped was because I had little babies in car seats that I was with all day. That's kind of tough to navigate, when you got the meals and the, strap. But now that they're back in school, the book is released, I'm planning to jump back in, which is one of my favorite things in the world to do. But nothing gives you a posture of gratitude and happiness and a true point to reflect back at yourself, like serving somebody who has true need. And then if you're able to meet that need in some small way, I love connecting with people. That's part of the reason why I'm a journalist. And so one of my favorite clients of all time, Mr. George, I guarantee you he has no idea the impact our little Tuesday morning talks would have on me, just because he had a very different perspective as someone who served in our nation's military, as someone who really firmly believed in all that our country had to offer, to the point where he felt like it was worth him sacrificing personally. And I just remember thinking, what do I love like that? Who am I willing to show up for? Who am I willing to be inconvenienced for? Who am I willing to sacrifice for? It's tough to be in a place of discontent when you're serving somebody.
Right.
It is life-giving. And my advice for young people that I mentor, I don't care what you do. I don't care what you care about. Once a month, 1 to 2 hours, just one time a month. And you will be amazed at the impact it'll make on you. And I don't care if it's, we have reporters who volunteer at Children's Mercy Hospital. We have folks who do work with some of the pet shelters in town, whatever it is. But it's a way for you to connect with other people who have a heart for serving others, which to me, those are the most beautiful people there are. And it also gives you something that you're putting back into the world, something beautiful and wonderful that you're able to give back. And I just think that's so important.
Your little ones they're getting old enough to have their own little individual personalities. And so is that something that you're teaching them? And if you are, how are you teaching? Do you take them with you? Are you planning to take them with you? How do you instill what you've just talked about in your little ones?
You got to serve as a family. I think that is so, so vital. We do Thanksgiving. So our church, I go to Concord in South Kansas City, and every Thanksgiving before the pandemic, we would have a Thanksgiving giveaway. There'd be a food line. Then there would also be like a pantry where you could come get clothing items and winter wear. And we would take the kids, and the kids would be little greeters. They'd walk around, and help out. And so it's important for my kids to see us serve. It's important for our kids to recognize your community is bigger than you, because these kids today.
That's right.
The world is all up in here, but it's important for them to see us serving. And then when they get to an appropriate age, it will be an expectation in my house that you will serve once a month. And you tell me what you want to do, where you want to volunteer. But I just feel like it's so crucial. It is so crucial. I have learned so much from the seniors on my Meals on Wheels routes over the last, 10 years. They have just taught me so much. The wisdom, the conversation, the fellowship, the connection. And in a world where we're so divided, technology is moving so fast that it's pushing us further and further away from each other. I just like things that bring us back together.
Well, if you raise your children to serve, if they watch you serve, you're not going to have to tell them you must serve. They will just do it. It will become part of what they do. They will see that as part of the way they live. And that's the way to raise your kids. I mean, that it's not something you have to tell them to do, that they will just begin to do it, and you'll smile like I've smiled and says, yes, more joy, more happiness.
Yes.
So
something
that's
did right.
Yes, absolutely. So, Dia, you're obviously really busy. I mean, you have this demanding career, a family to raise, you're involved in the community. What is it that you do? I think one of our questions is, what is it that you do to unwind and relax? How do you unwind from all that you do?
Oh, okay. So this is an interesting question. So running. Now that doesn't mean you have to run. Okay. So before you shut me off, running. I used to love to run before I had kids. I was never like a marathon runner or anything like that, but I just loved it as a workout. And I remember our son had just been born. He was about 6 months old, I'd say, and convinced the husband. I was like, look, I need a treadmill in the basement. I don't have time to drive to a gym, get a workout in, and then come back. So he puts the treadmill up, right? So first day, Mará, that I go down there to get on this treadmill, get a workout in, my son, who was crawling at the time, not me. I was like, my husband darts in there, snatches the baby up, but it's that I'm 100%. One of the things that I love to do to reset, I don't care if you walk, I don't care if you run, I don't care if you do spin, you ride your bike, you take a hike. There is something about being outdoors in nature, doing something good for your body, getting your body moving. It just clears your mind. I always say running is the one time my mind is totally clear. Also, job can't get a hold of me. Husband can't get a hold of me. Right. Those kids can't get a hold of me.
Absolutely.
And I think you feel so good. I mean, it gives you those endorphins. It gives you those happy hormones. I mean, I just feel so good after getting a workout in. And you always complain on the front end. I'm the person that I'll find every excuse, but once I get there, I'm good. But you never regret getting that workout in when it's done. And I think it's made me feel stronger. I feel like I have more energy. So that's something that I really enjoy doing to reset. And I also love to cook. So I run so I can eat.
Girl, we are like peas in a pod here. I don't run, but I do Taekwondo. And so I, I'm a black belt, and it took me 6 years to get there. It was not easy, let me tell you. I love it. I hate getting up and going. I'm just like, the more.
Why is that the worst part?
I know. The more I don't want to go, the more I know I need to go. And so I go anyway, and it is hard, and I'm exhausted, but it feels so good. And I too love to cook. Girl, I love to cook. It is so soothing, and I love to eat. So gotta work out if you want to eat. That's just the way it goes.
My daughter has also decided that she loves to be with me in the kitchen. And so that's something that I also really love about being able to cook. It's like a quiet time. She talks more to me even at 3, almost 4, when we're baking a cake or when we're doing stuff. I get to learn so many little things, nuances about her personality, who her friends at school are, all those little things. And so I value that time, man. I want to have experiences that we can share. So when she's older, number one, I can retire my oven mitts. Right. But number 2, I just want to create memories doing everyday stuff. I think social media has pushed us to this idea that everything needs to be an event or an occasion. The memories that I have growing up that I cherish most with my mom were getting library books and getting to sit in the big bed in her bed, and spend the day on a dreary or bad weather day reading books together. So not everything needs to be an occasion. So I think I like having those everyday kind of routine things that we make points for us to connect and just talk and chop it up. Of course, now my son want to get in the mix, and he's a whole whole experience.
Boy, I have 2 boys, but I know that boys and girls are very different. And so they will approach things differently. But hey, you know, my boys love to cook too. So I would get in the kitchen with them. They love doing that too. So that's another thing that, you know, the 3 of you guys can do. We're running out of time. There's so many other things I wanted to talk to you about. I really wanted to talk to you about you and your mom. I loved reading in the book about your relationship with your mom, the debates that you guys would have, and how those debates with you and your mom really were somewhat of a springboard to what you ended up doing in your life. Talk to me about that relationship, how the books and the challenges your mom gave you. That was wonderful.
Man, my mom is a bibliophile, okay? So I was really blessed to grow up in a house where there are books on every wall, books in every room. There's a bookshelf here, a bookshelf there, and you're gonna have a full mix. There's gonna be everything from children's books to anthologies. I mean, my mom reads everything. Even those horrible romance novels, not my speed. But anyway, I remember, you know, when we would be in school, she read every book I read. And so we would get to debate. It was like the one time my mom let me argue with her, you know, respectfully, of course, but I just love that, man. My mom was really big on challenging me to be a critical thinker from day one. She always said, it's okay to disagree, but you need to have a reason why. She was so good at asking me probing questions. You know, I would come home with some definitive statement. Well, this is true. And she would say, who told you that?
Right.
Why do you think that is? I mean, she just had a way of teasing out my critical thinking and forcing me to think differently. I remember asking her, why do you watch 3 different news stations in a day? 1 in the morning, 1 early evening, 1 late. And she said, well, I watch everybody and then I decide what the truth is.
There you go.
So I've been seeking truth my whole life. My mom's my best friend. In fact, she's here right now, wrangling those grandkids of hers, you know, my biggest supporter. I'm so grateful to have her as a safe space and a sounding board and just constant support. You know, I would not be who I am without my mom.
That's a really good segue to one more thing I want to ask you, because we are running out of time. And that is, who are you, Dia Wall? How does Dia Wall describe Dia Wall? Tell me, who are you?
I'm a woman who's still figuring it out. That's who I am. Right. And for the first time in my life, I can sit here and I can tell you that I'm okay with that. I think for a long time, I wanted to be the one who had all the answers, always perfect, always polished, always on point. Now, you're not gonna see me in makeup every day. Right. I'm okay in my jeans and my ponytail because I'm running after my kids some days. I'm okay telling you, ooh, I don't know, but I can find out. You know, I'm okay telling you I have goals that I haven't yet reached. You know, I don't get it perfectly every time. And I'm still unhappy sometimes. I think it's important for me to tell y'all that. I'm not somebody who walks around with this false positivity, but I am someone who I think has looked back and realized, man, I'm really blessed. And I have so much to be thankful for. And if I just lean into the life and experiences I've already had, I'm already prepared for the future that's going to come, which means so are you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Dia. This has been such a pleasure. I love talking to you. You're so full of energy, that beautiful smile you always have. It's really been a pleasure talking to you this evening. Thank you.
No, thank you so much.